It's 10 o'clock. It's rare that he's not banged right.
Thanks. The House will come to order. Members, please take your seats. Sergeant Arms.
The House is now in session. All persons not entitled to privileges on the floor, please retire to the gallery.
The members will rise and be led in prayer by Pastor James D. Acree, Bacon's Castle Baptist Church in Surrey, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, led by the gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Good morning. Let's pray. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. We thank you this morning that you have revealed yourself as Father through Jesus Christ. We recognize that your name is above every name and that your name alone is worthy of worship and praise. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We pray that, God, you will bring about your righteousness, justice, and loving kindness in our land and around the world, even as those things already prevail in your kingdom in heaven. Thank you for the promise that those things will indeed one day be the reality that you will bring about. Give us this day our daily bread. God, thank you for providing so abundantly for Virginia in particular and America as a whole. No nation on earth has been more blessed with daily bread than ours. We ask that in your loving kindness you would continue to meet our needs. Father, help us continue to trust in you for your provision. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. We thank you that in Christ you have offered forgiveness to all men. Teach me and everyone here to extend forgiveness and loving kindness to others, even to those who have done us wrong. Help our legislators, despite their differences, to extend kindness and graciousness across the political aisle. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. God, help us to always choose the right and reject the wrong, and help us to know the difference. Lead us by your Spirit and by your word, and keep us from succumbing to sinful pulls of arrogance and pride. Give all our leaders strength with humility of heart. For yours is the power and the glory forever and ever. You and you only are worthy of worship. And I pray this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's all right. No, I do it all the time.
The members will answer the roll call by indicating their presence on the electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll.
Mr. Speaker, a quorum is present.
House will come to order. Pursuant to House Rule 3, I've examined and approved the Journal of the House of Delegates for March 3rd, 2016. Motions, resolutions under Rule 39 are now in order. Does the clerk have any announcements or communications?
Several communications, Mr. Speaker. The Senate has rejected the House amendments to Senate Bill 468.
Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House insist on its amendments and request a committee of conference on the previously reported legislation.
Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate also has insisted on its amendments and requested a committee of conference on House Bill 1344.
Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House exceeded the request of the Senate for a committee of conference on the previously reported legislation.
Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is agreed to.
Finally, the Speaker appoints two sets of conferees on two Senate measures. On Senate Bill 120, Speaker appoints delegates LaRock, Albo, and Toscano as conferees on part of the House. For Senate Bill 120, conferees, delegates LaRock, Albo, and Toscano. And for Senate Bill 253, the Speaker appoints delegates Yancey, Bell of Albemarle, and Watts. For Senate Bill 253 on part of the House, Speaker appoints delegates Yancey, Bell of Albemarle, and Watts.
The gentlewoman from Norfolk, Ms. Hester.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Gentlewoman has the floor.
Thank you. Today on the floor, we have Tolly and Audrey Holcher. Would you please stand? From Tuckahoe Elementary School in Henrico County. They were formerly students at Larchmont Elementary School in Norfolk, which is in the 89th House District. They have joined us along with their parents today to learn how laws are made. Their trip here is an excused absence because we allow that in the Commonwealth. Please join me in welcoming them and wishing them well in their studies and give them a warm house welcome. Thank you.
We're delighted to have the visitors here with us today and hope you enjoy your time in the Capitol. The gentleman from Salem, Mr. Habib.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, members of the body, today with us in the gallery are the winners of the 8th District Art Contest. We have kids from all over the New River Valley and Roanoke Valley, along with parents, cousins, grandparents, and others. I hope the body would give them a warm house welcome.
We congratulate the winners of the contest. I'm glad you could be with us in the gallery today. The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Lemunion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the purpose of an introduction, a request, and a motion.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I think we're all familiar with the fact that we like to brag about our high school athletic teams. And so today it's my turn. I want to tell you about the Westfield Bulldogs, the 2015 6A high school championship football team. Coach Kyle Simmons and Director of Student Activities Terry Toll are in the gallery. I'd like to ask them to stand. The Westfield Bulldogs pulled off a 9-1 season, rolled through the playoffs 4 times, and I think the average margin of victory was 23 points. And then in the state championship game held at the University of Virginia, in triple overtime, the Westfield Bulldog defense held on in a goal line stand on the 2-yard line and secured a 49-42 victory. As you might imagine, there's a lot of pride in Western Fairfax County about this. I hope it'd be the pleasure of the body to give our guests from Westfield High a warm house welcome and congratulations.
We're pleased to have the visitors with us, and we congratulate you on your well-deserved success. Gentleman from Fairfax.
And Mr. Speaker, my request would be on behalf of delegates Boysko, Bulova, Hugo, and Plum, who represent the greater Westfield family, that we pull up House Joint Resolution 256 out of order.
Clerk will report a resolution.
House Joint Resolution number 256, commending the Westfield High School football team.
Gentleman from Fairfax.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move adoption of the motion and speak briefly to it.
Gentleman has the floor.
It has several whereas clauses that cover the topics I've just mentioned and a few other things, and of course the commending resolution congratulating Westfield High and the football team, and I hope it'd be the pleasure of the body to adopt the resolution.
As many as favor adoption of the resolution will please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Resolution is agreed to.
Thank you.
Gentlewoman from Westmoreland, Ms. Ranson.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentlewoman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, as soon as the House adjourned on Thursday, Delegate O'Quinn, Delegate Campbell, Delegate Rush, Delegate Yost, Delegate Austin, Delegate Villanueva, Delegate Wilt, Delegate Leftwich, Delegate Yancey, and myself changed into jeans and boots, and we traveled to the Northern Neck to survey the damage and participate in cleanup efforts in Richmond and Westmoreland counties. Mr. Speaker, I would like to sincerely thank the delegates for taking time out of their very busy schedules to volunteer and assist other Virginians in their disaster recovery efforts. We were able to pick up debris in Richmond County. We prayed with families in Westmoreland County. We spoke with DEQ and emergency management, and we were able to witness firsthand the trauma that these families experienced. Yesterday, I was so proud as we drove back into my community with so many of my colleagues and my friends to help this community in need. Mr. Speaker, I want to end by saying that we come to this body as strangers from vastly different regions of the Commonwealth, but on both sides of the aisle, we all love Virginia citizens. We're all caring people, and we're all doing what we can. And my trip home yesterday was proof of that, and I want to thank you.
The gentleman from Arlington, Mr. Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, for a couple times this year, I've had the privilege of singling out Governor Terry McAuliffe for all the great, outstanding things that he's doing in economic incentives and activities and bringing a lot of business, new business into the Commonwealth. But I want to single the administration out for another award that they receive having nothing to do with economic development. And it's in our area of our Department of Corrections. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Virginia is recognized by the Department of Justice for its huge drop in the number of offenders in restricted housing over a 5-year period. This is what we call segregation or isolation, solitary confinement, a lot of people refer to it as. I had the privilege of touring one of Virginia's supermax prisons, Red Onion, with a gentleman from Scott, and also from someone from the other chamber, Senator Adam Ebbin from Alexandria. And we got to see firsthand how these individuals are living. And that was 2011. Well, with the help of the administration, the McDonnell administration, but also a lot of praise for the department director, Director Harold Clark, for implementing a state-of-the-art program to bring people out of segregation into the general population in prison. And the Department of Justice has recognized Virginia, and it's actually singled Virginia out amongst 5 states in the entire country that's done such a good job in doing that. When the step-down program began in 2011, 511 DOC offenders were housed in long-term administrative segregation. All but 84 of the original 511 offenders have completed a program, a sort of a step-down program. And you think to yourself, why should we care about something like this? Well, when you're locked up in a cell like this and you're away from human contact, most of these people will get out of jail and they go right back into our communities. And so this helps them function when they get out into our communities. Since the reform, Virginia has witnessed a 72% reduction in the number of people in this restrictive housing. At Red Onion, incident reports, and this is another thing of why we ought to care, incident reports are down 65%. Inmate grievances have fallen 71%, and informal complaints have been reduced by 76%. That's why we should care, because this is a safer environment for our correctional officers, but also for other inmates as well. In referencing the step-down program, the department focused on risk reduction strategies, enhance inmates' motivation to change problematic behavior, combined with programming to provide new skills. And so, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I want to commend and congratulate the Department of Corrections for this wonderful, worthwhile recognition. I want to commend the Department of Corrections for instituting this and singling out Director Clark and Secretary Moran for taking over this. This is an important issue, and I'm certainly glad we're doing it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Bulova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rise for an announcement.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, as we continue on the work of the House, sometimes we forget that just a few blocks away we have some absolutely gorgeous natural resources. And so I'm pleased to announce that on Sunday, the Outdoor Recreation Caucus is going to be hosting an event on Belle Isle. And so at 2 o'clock, we're going to meet at the Belle Isle parking lot, and we're going to engage in either hiking or biking so that you can enjoy the outdoors, get some exercise, and get some peace and tranquility with the James River. And then at 4 o'clock, we're going to gather at Legends Brewery for some good cheer. This Sunday is going to be perfect hiking weather, mid-50s. I hope you can join us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Suffolk, Mr. Morris.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Gentleman may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, today our prayer was delivered by Pastor Jimmy Acree. Pastor Acree grew up in Uruguay. His parents were missionaries. They came to the United States when he was 17. He is a graduate of Ferrum College and Columbia International University. He's been married to his lovely wife, Ann, for over 30 years, where they have 6 wonderful children. Pastor Acree's been the pastor of Bacon's Castle Baptist Church in Surrey since 1987 and is a faithful man of God leading souls to Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving Pastor Acree a warm house welcome.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a request and a motion.
May proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the request would be that on page 2 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 294 be moved to the regular calendar.
Without objection, Senate Bill 294 to the regular calendar.
And a motion, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I would move that the following bills go by for the day. On page 6 of the printed calendar, Senate Bills 126 and 669. On page 8, Senate Bills 578, 579, 607. On page 10, Senate Bill 758. On page 14, House Bill 1213. And on page 27, House Bill 259.
The bills listed by the gentleman will be by for the day. The gentleman from Arlington, Mr. Lopez.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an announcement.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to wish my colleague from Arlington, it will be his birthday. Patrick Hope is going to be celebrating a birthday on Sunday. I wish the body would give him a round of applause for achieving another year.
The gentleman from Giles, Mr. Yost.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a request.
Gentleman may state it.
I request that the journal reflect that my seatmate, the gentleman from Campbell, Delegate Ferris, is absent today due to pressing personal business.
Journal will so reflect. Are there further motions or resolutions under Rule 39? If not, the clerk will call the calendar.
Calendar for the Virginia House of Delegates for today, Friday, March 4th, 2016. First category of bills, Senate bills on third reading uncontested calendar. Senate bills, third reading uncontested, 10 bills in the block. First up, Senate Bill 204, a bill to amend and reenact various sections of the code relating to real estate settlement agents. Bills report for the Committee on General Laws.
Gentleman from Hanover, Mr. Peace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 204 is largely a technical measure adding provisions relating to real estate settlement agents, a new term, closing disclosure, defined in the bill as a combined mortgage loan disclosure statement, final loan terms, and closing costs prescribed under the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Federal Act. This bill is a cleanup, recognizes changes in HUD documents made recently. Move that the bill passed.
Continuing with the block, printed calendar, page 2, Senate Bill 294 has been moved to the regular calendar. Accordingly, next up, Senate Bill 337, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Department of Veterans Services, Virginia War Memorial Division, names and homes of record designation for Virginians killed in action. The bill is reported to the Committee on General Laws with a substitute.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Mr. Speaker, could that go by temporarily?
Without objection, by temporarily.
Continuing with the block on page 3 of today's printed calendar, Senate Bill 352, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to official emblems and designations, State Rock Nelsonite, reported for the Committee on General Laws with an amendment.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill designates Nelsonite as the state rock of Virginia and also consolidates the other state emblems and designations about the Northern Cardinal, the American Dogwood, et cetera, and I would move that the bill pass.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendment as made in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment's agreed to.
Continuing with the uncontested block, Senate Bill 374, a bill to amend and reenact various sections of the Code of Virginia relating to financial institutions, references to federal laws. Bills reported for the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 374 updates references to the Federal Reserve Board and its regulations that were made obsolete by the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Bill. I hope it be the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 377, a bill to amend and reenact 2 sections of the Code of Virginia relating to landlord and tenant law, tenant remedies. Report from the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Hanover, Mr. Peace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 377, identical to House Bill 1209, Delegate Collins, which passed this House February 10th, 99-0. He authorizes General District Court to terminate lease upon tenant's request, which is not currently permitted. I move that the bill pass.
Turning to page 4 of the printed calendar, continuing with the block, Senate Bill 418, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Public Procurement Act, cooperative procurement, installation of artificial turf or other athletic surfaces. Bills reported to the Committee on General Laws with an amendment.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Lemunion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of the amendment.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendment? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment's agreed to. Gentleman from Fairfax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this bill simply clarifies a portion of the Virginia Public Procurement Act related to cooperative procurement and the installation of artificial turf and other athletic surfaces. I hope it be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 517, a bill to require the Virginia Information Technologies Agency to utilize service-disabled veteran businesses as a component of any small business enhancement measure implemented by the governor. Report from the Committee on General Laws with a substitute.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield to the gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Lingenfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the committee substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. Gentleman Prince William.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the underlying bill requires that every state agency to include as a component of any small business enhancement measure implemented by the governor pursuant to the Code of Virginia a requirement for a minimum of 3% utilization of service-disabled veterans businesses. It was originally 5%. The committee believed that 3% more accurately reflected the sentiment, and so I move we pass the bill.
Turning to page 5 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 645, a bill to amend and reenact various sections of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, exempt records concerning critical infrastructure, government infrastructure, or security information. The bill was reported to the Committee on Laws with a substitute.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Lemunion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of the committee substitute.
The questions on adoption of the committee substitute. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. Gentleman from Fairfax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 645, as amended by the substitute, clarifies the term critical infrastructure information in the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. I hope it would be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 704, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to overtime compensation fire protection employees. The bill is reported for the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 704 broadens the definition of fire protection employee for the purposes of determining eligibility for overtime compensation. I would move that the bill pass.
And Mr. Speaker, returning to page 2 of the printed calendar, the final bill in the uncontested third reading block, Senate Bill 337, a bill to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Department of Veteran Services, Virginia War Memorial Division, names and homes of record designation for Virginians killed in action. Bill reported from the Committee on General Laws with a substitute.
The gentleman from Henrico, Mr. O'Bannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move we adopt the substitute offered by the General Laws Committee.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. Substitute agreed to. Mr. Henrico.
Mr. Speaker, this is a part of the code deals with our war memorial. It updates the inclusions to include war and terror victims and updates the timing of the naming on the wall to reflect the addition we're doing. So I hope we'll pass the bill.
Shall the bill is passed.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Fairfax.
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion. Senate Bill 204 on page 1 of the printed calendar. Go to the regular calendar and buy for the day.
Senate Bill 204 by for the day?
Yes, and to the regular calendar.
And to the regular calendar. Without objection, by for the day into the regular calendar.
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, on page 3, Senate Bill, I would move that Senate Bill 352 be moved to the regular calendar and by for the day.
Without objection, Senate Bill 352 to the regular calendar and by for the day. Shall the bills pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 98, no 0.
Ayes 98, no 0. The bill is passed. The bills are passed.
Continuing with today's calendar, next category of bills, Senate bills on third reading regular. Senate bills third reading regular, page 5 of the printed version. First up, Senate Bill 224, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to public schools tobacco products. The bill is reported from the Committee on General Laws, and during consideration yesterday, floor amendment was offered by Delegate Lingenfelder that had been subsequently was severed into 2 parts. And there are floor amendments offered today by Delegate Lingenfelder as well.
The gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Lingenfelder.
Mr. Speaker, I request that the floor amendments that we were to consider yesterday be withdrawn.
Without objection, they'll be withdrawn.
Mr. Speaker, I believe we have new floor amendments and request the clerk to report them.
Clerk will report the floor amendments.
Floor amendments offered by Delegate Lingenfelder, the engrossed version of the bill. There are 4. Amendment number 1, at the beginning of line 13, insert capital A, creating a new subsection. Amendment 2, also on line 15, after the word bus, strike the comma and insert the word or. Amendment number 3 on line 15, after the word property, strike comma or add a school-sponsored activity. And finally, amendment number 4, after line 15, insert capital B for a new section that reads, notwithstanding the provisions of subsection A school board may permit the use of tobacco products or nicotine vapor products, as those terms are defined in section 18.2, 371.2, within a designated area of high school property that is outside of any school building.
Mr. Speaker,
Gentleman Prince William.
Speaking to the amendments, yesterday the gentleman from Fauquier brought up a point as to whether or not the bill actually extended to other publicly owned property, and it was our judgment in speaking with Legislative Services that it probably did. And so essentially what we've done is remove the school activities language, which should take care of that problem because now the bill focuses keenly on the school property and again is permissive in so much as they may designate an area on school property for smoking. I hope that we will accept the amendments.
Gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Rock, speaking to the amendments.
Mr. Speaker, could we separate amendment number 4, the provision B, the new language for action?
Without objection, amendment number 4 will be separated, and we'll vote on amendments 1, 2, and 3 at the same time. The gentleman from Charlottesville, Mr. Toscano.
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman from Prince William resume the floor for a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Gentleman yields.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the gentleman, I assume yesterday he told us that the patron of the bill was accepted the amendments. Is that still the case with these new amendments?
Mr. Speaker, I respond to the gentleman to tell him that I have not personally spoken to the patron with respect to the amendment that would strike the language of school activities. I would say to the gentleman, however, that if it's the pleasure of the body to pass the amended bill, and if the gentleman in the other body is unhappy with that, then he would put it in conference.
Thank you.
The questions on adoption of the floor amendments offered by the gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Lingenfelder. We'll look at amendments 1, 2, and 3. All in favor of adopting amendments 1, 2, and 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That wasn't very hearty. How about those in favor of amendments 1, 2, and 3, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign.
for, 43, noes 46.
The amendments are rejected. Does the gentleman wish to do Amendment 4?
I would say to the Speaker that we probably should do Amendment 4.
Okay. The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Albo, speaking to the amendment.
Please?
Yes, sir.
So I had a couple elections like you all have, and you know those brochures that come out and they always say something outrageous, and then there's a little footnote, and the footnote says 2016 session amendment number 15 to Senate Bill 224. And let me tell you what this is going to say. Delegate X voted to have smoking lounges in our schools because they're not going to tell you on the brochure the notwithstanding subsection A. So I'm just telling y'all, it's a warning to you that even though this amendment is probably a smart amendment in the big picture of things, this is not going to look good when it's taken out of context.
I think it's fair to say he wasn't talking to you all about that. The gentleman, Prince William, Mr. Lingenfelder.
Mr. Speaker, I would say, speaking to the amendment, I would suggest to the gentleman from Fairfax that that is a ubiquitous condition in all legislation. And so I would encourage you to vote if you believe that this is good public policy and vote on that basis, because at the end of the day, that is our charge.
The questions on adoption of floor amendment number 4. As many as favor that motion, please say aye.
Mr. Speaker,
Gentleman, Prince William.
Let the journal reflect I kept my promise.
And let the journal reflect they're coming after you. Those opposed, no? No. The amendment's rejected. The question is on adoption. Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes, ayes 32, noes 67.
Ayes 32, noes 67. The bill fails.
Continuing with today's calendar, Senate Bills third reading regular, page 6 of the printed version, Senate Bill 669 has been taken by for the day. Accordingly, next up, Senate Bill 39, a bill to amend and reenact 3 sections of the Code of Virginia relating to unlawful transport of alcoholic beverages penalty. Bill is reported for the Committee on General Laws with a substitute.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Knight.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Substitutes agreed to. The gentleman from Virginia Beach.
Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 39 adds knowingly to the code for underage transport and possession of alcoholic beverages for persons under the age of 21. I move the House pass the bill.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 92, noes 4.
Ayes 92, noes 4. The bill is passed.
Senate Bill 126 has been taken by for the day. Page 7 of today's printed calendar. Next up, Senate Bill 154, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to alcoholic beverage control, mixed beverage licenses, performing arts facilities. The bill is reported for the Committee on General Laws on the 18th and again on March 1st.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Knight.
Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 154 creates a mixed beverage license for performing arts venues in Norfolk and Richmond that have over 1,400 patrons. I move the House pass the bill.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 90, noes 7.
Ayes 90, noes 7. The bill is passed.
Senate Bill 237, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to the Virginia Property Owners Association Act, condemnation of common area valuation. Bill is reported for the Committee on General Laws with an amendment.
The gentleman from Hanover, Mr. Peace.
Move the committee amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendment? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is agreed to. The gentleman from Hanover.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, Senate Bill 237 as amended provides a mechanism for valuing portions of common areas under condemnation in property owners associations. Often based on the covenant's use of those properties is restricted, thereby devaluing those common areas. And so upon condemnations, there should be a readily ascertainable way to value that property. I move that the bill pass.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, no 0.
Ayes 99, no 0. The bill is passed.
Turning to page 8 of the printed calendar, Senate Bills 578, Senate Bill 579, and Senate Bill 607 all have been taken by for the day. Continuing with Senate bills on third reading regular calendar, Senate Bill 695, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to alcoholic beverage control, wine and beer licenses for certain properties. The bill is reported for Committee on General Laws with an amendment.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Knight.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee amendment.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendment? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The committee amendment is agreed to. The gentleman from Virginia Beach.
Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 695 provides that the ABC Board may grant retail on-premises wine and beer licenses to persons operating a concert or dinner theater venue on property formerly operated as Natural Bridge High School. And under the license, they're permitted to sell beer and wine only during events for on-premises consumption, and food must be prepared on the premises and served whenever the wine and beer is served. Mr. Speaker, I move the House pass the bill.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 92, no 6.
Ayes 92, no 6. The bill is passed.
Senate Bill 734, a bill to amend and reenact various sections of the Code of Virginia relating to public charter schools. Report for the Committee on Education with a substitute.
The gentleman from Loudon, Mr. Greason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute? As many as favor that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Substitute is agreed to. Gentleman from Loudon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, we've spent a lot of time this year talking about charter schools. We've talked about how they can be approved. The gentleman from Albemarle did a great job carrying the constitutional amendment. Unfortunately, it did not move forward. A lot of people here would like to see an expansion of charter schools in the Commonwealth. This bill does not do that. So I just want to be clear about what this bill is. We spent about 5 weeks talking about charter schools, and we realized that the code section that addresses charter schools is woefully out of date. So this bill, while it does not expand the authority and how that authority is granted, it does do, I think, a pretty good job of cleaning up the application process, the local approval process, the contracts that will be put in place between charter schools, the review of the application process, and really does do, I think, a good job of modernizing this section of the code. It did report out of the Education Subcommittee unanimously. It did have some opposition at the full committee, but I think it's a really good work, and I'd appreciate that y'all consider it, and if you have any questions, obviously we'll answer them. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield to the gentleman from Prince William for a few comments on charter schools.
Gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman from Loudon has well described what this actually does. And I hope that you'll support the bill because I do think it will bring more clarity to local school boards as they look at both the application piece of the charter school law and the contract piece. It lays it out more clearly for them, and I think it'll make it easier for local school divisions to make decisions one way or the other about a charter school application. I hope that it will result in more charter schools. I'm not encouraged that it will. I think that there's still some things that we need to do. But as it goes, I do think that this bill is a good first step to getting our charter school bill in a more understandable posture, and I would encourage your support.
The gentlewoman from Fairfax, Ms. Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to ask that this bill go by for the day, if I may speak to my request.
Gentlewoman has the floor.
Because of the extensive rewrite, possibly, and the fact that this is the first time that we have seen this version as a body, and the fact that public education really affects all of us in our districts. It's not like some of the bills that we handle that are very narrowly focused, and we definitely appreciate the committee's work on the bill. If we could have a day to look at this language, I know I personally would feel far more comfortable. So again, I request that it go by for the day.
Without objection, Senate Bill 734 by for the day.
Continuing with Senate bills on third reading regular, Senate Bill 748, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to the Economic Development Infrastructure Act of 2016, voluntary program authorizing public utilities to acquire utility right-of-way for qualified economic development sites. Bill is reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that we adopt the committee substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. Gentleman from Scott.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this bill deals with getting utilities to our mega sites, and what the House subcommittee does is to make sure that the ultimate end user would be the one that would ultimately pay for getting those utilities to that site. Hope it be the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Mr. Speaker?
The gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Marshall.
Would the gentleman yield for a question?
I yield.
Kneel. Gentleman yields.
Would this bill, in the circumstance in my district, require Amazon to pay for the transmission lines that are going to go across the countryside for 6 miles because they're outside of an industrial use zone?
I would say to the gentleman that this does not have anything to do with that particular situation. This deals mostly, if you look at the bill, mostly with a program that would be set up where the VEDP would actually designate a mega site, and they would go through a lot of criteria to get to that mega site designation. So I would say no, probably Amazon, your site would not be designated as such.
Mr. Speaker, further question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Gentleman yields.
I do not see where this restricts such sites only to industrial use zones. So does this preclude zoning, or does this override zoning authority for local governments?
No, I would say it does not override zoning authorities, because this would be an instant where a locality, be it a single county or 2 or 3 counties coming together to designate one of these mega sites. And these mega sites are huge. You know, you're talking 500-600 acre sites that are available for big manufacturing businesses to go in. And I would say that it would not interfere and should not interfere with zoning of a particular locality.
Thank you.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 96, noes 2.
Ayes 96, noes 2. The bill is passed.
Turning to page 10 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 758 has been taken by for the day. Returning to page 2 of the printed calendar, page 2, Senate Bill 294, a bill to amend and reenact section of the code relating to retaliatory actions by state officers and employees against persons providing testimony before a committee or subcommittee of the General Assembly. Report from the Committee on General Laws with an amendment. And Mr. Speaker, there also are floor amendments.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Knight.
Mr. Speaker, could the clerk report the floor amendments?
Clerk will report a floor amendment.
Floor amendments, 2 floor amendments offered by Delegate Knight. Amendment number 1 on line 87, after capital B for that section, insert the following language. To be covered by the provisions of this section, a person who provides testimony before a committee or subcommittee of the General Assembly shall do so in good faith and upon a reasonable belief that the information is accurate. Testimony that is reckless or that the person knew or should have known was false, confidential, malicious, or otherwise prohibited by law or policy shall not be deemed good faith testimony, and insert the letter C. The second amendment is then on line, at the beginning of line 90, strike the capital C and insert D, capital D.
I would ask the gentleman, are these in conflict, the committee amendment and these two amendments, the floor amendments?
No, sir.
Why don't we adopt the committee amendment first then, okay?
Yes, sir. I'll move the committee amendment.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendments. Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Committee amendments agreed to. Gentleman from Virginia Beach. Speaking to the floor amendments.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the floor amendment. What this floor amendment was brought to me by the patron, Senator DeStefan, was brought to him by the governor's office, and they all agree this amendment makes the bill more clear and fixes unintended consequences. What this floor amendment does is testimony before one of our committees in here that is going to offer protections to people that come and offer testimony, but it doesn't offer protection to someone that comes and produces malicious or false testimony. So that's what this particular floor amendment does, and I'll move the floor amendment.
Gentleman from Charlottesville.
Mr. Speaker, speaking in the floor amendment.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, this is probably a very reasonable floor amendment, but there are a lot of words in here that got lawyers get lawyers upset. So I'd ask if we could please just take it by for the day so we could take a look at the language, just make sure it's right. That's my request.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Albo, speaking. Well, you took it. Without objection, Senate Bill 294 by for the day.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Arlington, Mr. Lopez.
Mr. Speaker, having voted on the prevailing side by which we defeated SB 224, I move that we reconsider that vote.
What page?
Oh, apologize. Page 5.
The gentleman moves that having voted on the prevailing side by which we rejected Senate Bill 224, we reconsider that vote. As many as favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Motion's agreed to. The question is shall the bill pass?
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
No, we just killed the Steph's bill. That'll save time on Monday, and that'll teach him to go over to the Senate. Shall the bill pass?
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman who made the motion, was he on the prevailing side?
Said he was.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Charlottesville, Mr. Toscano.
Mr. Speaker, speaking briefly to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, the gentleman from Fairfax talked about mail that could be sent in campaigns, and so I would encourage you to take a look at this, because even though this might not be a perfect bill, it does create some prohibitions against the use of tobacco products on school buses or on school property, and I hope you'll support the bill. I hope you'll vote yes.
Gentleman from Fauquier, Mr. Weber.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
I beg your pardon?
Speaking to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
I would ask that we reject the bill simply because of the bill, since we did not adopt the amendments, still has the public facility issue that you have, because this is a school-sponsored facility. It could be at it could be at a park, it could be somewhere else, and somebody walking by, some good old farmer walking by with a leaf of tobacco in, could be at fault with this bill. So I urge you to reject the bill.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 60.
Ayes 38, no 60. The bill fails to pass.
Returning to page 10 of today's printed calendar, the next category of bills, House bills with Senate amendments. House bills with Senate amendments. First, House Bill 773 has been taken by until Monday. First up then, House Bill 25, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to tampering, etc., with firefighting equipment penalty. The bill passed the House February 2nd, passed the Senate with an amendment on March 2nd.
The gentleman from Salem, Mr. Habib.
Mr. Speaker, I ask the body to reject the Senate amendment.
The question is on adoption of the Senate amendment. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, oh, that's a court vote, I'm sorry. Take it all back. Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 2, noes 97.
Ayes 2, noes 97. The Senate amendment is rejected.
Turning to page 11 of the printed calendar, House Bill 168, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to passing stop school buses, mailing of summons. The bill passed the House February 16th, passed the Senate with a substitute on March 2nd.
The gentleman from Loudon, Mr. LaRock.
Mr. Speaker, I would move that we reject the Senate amendment.
Shall the Senate substitute be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 99.
Ayes 0, noes 99. The Senate amendment or substitute is rejected.
House Bill 227, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to hearsay exceptions regarding the admissibility of statements by children in certain cases. The bill passed the House February 2nd, passed the Senate with a substitute on March 2nd.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Albo.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this bill is a bill that deals with crimes against children and whether you're going to allow statements into evidence that were made by somebody else. The majority of states in the country have a bill similar. We passed this out overwhelming majority, but what we decided to do in the Senate was to list the actual offenses. And so all this bill does, it doesn't change the theme of the bill. What we're doing here is just listing the offenses that this can apply to. So it will be a pleasure to the House to adopt the Senate substitute.
Shall the Senate substitute be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, noes 0.
Ayes 99, noes 0. The Senate substitute is agreed to.
House Bill 373, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to confidentiality of information about victims of certain crimes. Bill passed the House February 9th, passed Senate with amendments on the 2nd of March.
The gentleman from Newport News, Mr. Yancey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would ask the House reject the Senate amendments.
Okay. Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 99.
Ayes 0, noes 99. The amendments are rejected.
Turning to page 12 of the printed calendar, continuing House Bills, Senate Amendments, House Bill 588, a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the code relating to protective orders, contacts, physical presence, passed the House February 16th, passed Senate with amendments on the 2nd of March.
The gentleman from Smith, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, the amendment was actually interposed at my request over in the Senate. The intention of it is to protect against the unintended consequence of dispossessing next-door neighbors from their home during the pendency of the emergency protective order. The amendment obviously would be friendly, and I would urge the body to accept the same.
Shall the Senate amendments be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, no 0.
Ayes 99, no 0. The Senate amendments are agreed to.
House Bill 622, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to entering vehicle, interference with rights of owner, penalty. The bill passed the House February 16th, passed Senate with an amendment in nature of substitute on March 2nd.
The gentleman from Albemarle, Mr. Bell.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, we're still working on the language of this, so I would ask you to reject the Senate amendment and allow us to work on it in conference.
Shall the Senate substitute be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 1, noes 97.
Ayes 1, noes 97. The Senate amendments are rejected.
House Bill 645, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to orders for mental health evaluations and treatment of certain criminal defendants. The bill passed the House February 16th, passed Senate with an amendment on the 2nd of March.
The gentleman from Chesapeake, Mr. Leftwich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the body, all the Senate amendment does is change the tense of a verb, and I would ask you to accept the Senate amendments.
Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to?
Let's vote.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, no 0.
Ayes 99, no 0. Senate amendment is agreed to.
Continuing on page 13 of the printed calendar, House Bill 667, a bill to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Criminal Injury Compensation Fund claims. The bill passed the House February 9th, passed Senate with a substitute on the 2nd of March.
The gentleman from Hanover, Mr. Peace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, the Senate substitute is really technical and clarifying in nature so that one particular claimant may be able to access funds from the Criminal Injury Compensation Fund related to a cold case hit and a subsequent prosecution thereof. I move that we adopt the Senate substitute.
Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, no 0.
Ayes 99, no 0. The Senate substitute is agreed to.
House Bill 924, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to the disclosure of electronic communication, verification, and admissibility of contents. Bill passed the House February 16th, passed Senate with a substitute on March 2nd.
The gentleman from Williamsburg, Mr. Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, House Bill 924 allowed a company that was responding to a search warrant providing emails or text messages to simply provide an affidavit that said that was the document provided. The Senate was concerned that it's the way we had worded it may make it easier for the contents to be admitted into evidence. We did language changes it, making it clear that the affidavit speaks to the authenticity of the document only. So I ask that we accept the Senate substitute.
Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, no 0.
Ayes 99, no 0. The Senate substitute is agreed to.
House Bill 1110, a bill to amend and reenact 3 sections of the Code of Virginia relating to temporary detention, notice of recommendation, communication with magistrate. The bill passed the House February 16th, passed Senate with amendments on the 2nd of March.
The gentleman from Albemarle, Mr. Bell.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, this makes 2 cleanup grammatical corrections, and then the third would be to add designee of law enforcement to the definition of law enforcement with whom someone can be left when they are waiting for their TDO to be heard. I would ask the body to accept the Senate amendments and pass the bill.
Shall the Senate amendments be agreed to? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 97, no 0.
Ayes 97, no 0. The Senate amendments are agreed to.
Turning to page 14 of today's printed calendar, House Bills with Senate Amendments, House Bill 1160, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to the collection, storage, and analysis of physical evidence recovery kits from victims of sexual assault offenses. Bill passed the House February 16th, passed the Senate with an amendment on the 2nd of March.
The gentleman from Albemarle, Mr.
Speaker, members of the House, this bill, as it left the House, said Office of Chief Medical Examiner. The Senate added the word the, so it reads Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. After a lengthy discussion with committee members, we've decided to accept this amendment and hope you will do so. Thank you.
Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 96, noes 3.
Ayes 96, noes 3. Senate amendment is agreed to.
House Bill 1213 has been taken by for the day. House Bill 13.
Speaker.
The gentleman from Albemarle, Mr. Bell.
Having voted on the prevailing side whereby the House accepted the word the in House Bill 1160, I would ask us to reconsider that vote so that a member could correct his vote. House Bill 1160 on page 14.
Don't you think he could do a gray sheet?
No, sir, not for this.
The gentleman from Albemarle asked, having voted on the prevailing side in which we accepted the the amendment offered by the Senate on House Bill 1160, we reconsider that vote. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 98, noes 1.
Ayes 98, noes 1. The Senate amendment is agreed to.
House Bill 1359, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to the Transit Capital Project Revenue Advisory Board report, passed the House February 12th, passed the Senate with a substitute on March 2nd.
The gentleman hand over, Mr. Peace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 1359, as it left the House, asked for the Transit Capital Project Revenue Advisory Board to be established to examine issues related to the impacts of loss of revenue of state transit capital funds and to identify additional sources of revenue to recover the capital losses. The Senate substitute was put forward by Senator Carrico at my request to add number 3 and number 4 subsections of 33.2, 1843 that would also establish a prioritization process, not unlike what we have for roads in House Bill 2. This language tracks language that we've already approved in our House budget as well. Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt the Senate substitute.
Shall the Senate substitute be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 83, noes 14.
Ayes 83, noes 14. The Senate substitute is agreed to.
Continuing with today's calendar, page 15 of the printed version, resolution regular calendar. Resolution regular calendar. Senate Joint Resolution 88, directing the Joint Legislative and Audit Review Commission to study specific early childhood development programs, prenatal to age 5, in the Commonwealth in order for the General Assembly to determine the best strategy for future early childhood development investments. Report for the Committee on Rules.
The gentleman from Augusta, Mr. Landis.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, this House Joint Resolution, or Senate Joint Resolution 88 was explained earlier, but basically what we would have JLARC do is study early childhood development programs and report back to us. I think hopefully most of the members' questions have been answered. The reason it was passed by, I would move that the House pass the resolution.
Shall the resolution be adopted? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 95, noes 4.
Ayes 95, noes 4. The resolution is adopted.
Continuing with the calendar, memorial resolutions laid on the Speaker's table. The memorial resolutions to be adopted in block are listed on pages 15 through 17.
Does any member wish to remove a resolution from the block? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the memorial resolutions laid on the Speaker's table listed on pages 15 through 17 will please rise. The resolutions are agreed to.
Continuing with the calendar, commending resolutions laid on the Speaker's table. The commending resolutions to be adopted in block are listed on pages 18 through 27, with the exception of House Joint Resolution 256, which already has been adopted.
Does any member wish to remove a resolution from the block? Gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Lamont.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to remove 382, HJ 382 on page 21 and ask that that go by for the day.
All those in favor of adopting the commending resolutions laid on the Speaker's table on pages 18 through 27, with the exception of House Joint Resolution 256 and 382, will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Those resolutions are agreed to.
Continuing with the calendar, House bill vetoed by the governor, House Bill 259, has been taken for the day. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, that completes today's calendar.
Does the clerk have any announcements or communications?
Just several announcements, Mr. Speaker. I would remind the body that all requests, drafts, redrafts, and corrections for joint commending memorial resolutions are due across the way to Division of Legislative Services by 5 p.m. today. Also, all requests to be removed as a co-patron are due here to the front desk staff by 5 today. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I would simply remind the body, I communicated with everyone via email on Wednesday about the new GAB design meetings, looking at building, a new General Assembly building, and you would be invited next Monday, March 7th from 3 to 5 to come down and look at space, a charrette, drawing, a draft of what you all might like to see in such space. So I know you all get a lot of communications, but from 3 to 5 next week over in House Room D will be an opportunity. The next day in the afternoon, your LAs will have that opportunity as well. Looking at today's meetings this afternoon and Monday morning, all meetings have been canceled. So nothing this afternoon, no legislative meetings today, and no legislative meetings on Monday, save for House Democratic Caucus will meet at 9:30 in House Room 2 downstairs in the Capitol here, and House Republican Caucus will meet at 9:30 in House Room 1. That completes the announcements I have at this time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move when the House adjourn today to adjourn to reconvene Monday, March 7th at 10 a.m.
The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox, moves that when the House adjourn today, adjourn to reconvene Monday at 10 a.m. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is agreed to. The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House do now adjourn.
Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox, moves the House do now adjourn. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is agreed to. The House stands adjourned till 10 a.m. on Monday.